Hello everybody, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome back to my podcast if you're listening to this episode in the audio version only. My name is Rux, I'm a Western tropical astrologer, and today we are going to be talking about the full moon in Pisces, taking place on the 10th of September at 9:58 in the morning GMT time. This full moon is happening at 17 degrees 40 minutes of Pisces. Therefore, if you have personal planets in your chart or angles in the natal chart close to 17 degrees of mutable signs, you are going to feel this full moon the most. Let's recap. What are the mutable signs? Virgo, Pisces, and Gemini, Sagittarius. For instance, in my case, the full moon is very, very strongly activating my midheaven IC axis in the chart. My midheaven is at 16 degrees of Pisces. Before we start analyzing this full moon, I have a few things that I would like to share with you. First and foremost, do keep in mind that I am a Western tropical astrologer. Therefore, all videos on my channel and all episodes on my podcast will follow Western tropical astrology. Also, in my practice, I use the whole sign house system. In the whole sign house system, the sign of the ascendant will become the sign that covers the entire first house. For instance, if you are a Pisces rising, then Pisces will cover your entire first house in the natal chart. Then Aries will govern your second house. It will cover your entire second house, and so on. If you use a different house system, then by all means, please feel free to go ahead and do it. There are tens of house systems out there. I use what I have found to be the most accurate in my experience and in my clients' experience, especially when we talk about timings. If you want to work with me, if you want to book a live astrological consultation, you can find me on my website, which is writteninthestars-astrology.com. That is writteninthestars-astrology.com. You can go to the services section on my website, and if you are a new client, you can go straight to the 1-hour live Zoom consultation option. This option is perfect for you. First of all, if you're a new client, like I said, and secondly, if you would like me to analyze your natal chart, or if that's something that you're already familiar with, we can do a deep dive in this 1-hour session into one or several specific areas of interest, such as your career, your relationship sector, finances, and so on. We can look at natal themes, we can look at the year ahead, we can look at major themes coming up in the months or in the year ahead of you. We can also dive into compatibility between you and a partner. We can look at your astrocartography. Essentially, the 1-hour live Zoom consultation is completely customizable to your needs. This is not a generic type of reading like someone misunderstood the other time when I shared this in my video. This 1-hour live Zoom consultation follows your natal chart. It is completely personalized and it is completely customizable to your topics of interest. So I hope that clears out any sort of misunderstandings around the service that I offer. If you are an existing client, so if you have worked with me in the past, you will see that on my website there is a service called Year Ahead Forecast. This is also done via Zoom, so via live video call, and obviously we will record it if you want me to. If you say that you don't want to, that is completely up to you, and I will not record the session. In general, all the sessions that I do with clients are recorded unless they ask me not to record them, and afterwards I send you the recording so that you can rewatch, re-listen, take notes as many times as you need. So going back to existing clients, you will see, folks, that on my website there is a service called the Year Ahead Forecast for those like you. This is specifically if you want us to get together and look in depth at what the next 12 months have in store for you. I do this using a combination of forecasting techniques, including transits, annual perfections, secondary progressions, firdaria, and more. So again, written in the stars-astrology.com if you want to work with me. I'm currently taking bookings for the beginning of October. Full moon in Pisces. So this is an interesting one. It's a mixed bag, as life generally is. There's some harmonious aspects in the sky at the time of this full moon, and there's also a few things that are likely to indicate some sort of, I want to say, suffering. You might say, Rux, we know that Pisces is the sign of the martyr. We know that Pisces is connected with sacrifice. It is connected with charity. It is connected with letting go. And indeed, in general, at a full moon in Pisces, these are likely to be big themes that come up both at a collective level and at an individual level. This full moon is going to be harmoniously aspecting Uranus, so this is the part that I'm excited about. There could be some really good news collectively and on a personal level when it comes to really acknowledging that the fact that we've let go of something, we have released something in our life, has worked in our favor. It may feel like there's some sort of pleasant surprise coming up as a result of surrendering to a greater power, surrendering to the universe, to the divine, and just kind of like deciding to no longer be in resistance, to no longer push against the tidal wave, to no longer try to force things to happen. So this is what I'm liking. On the other hand, the moon is applying to a conjunction with Neptune. Neptune is connected with water, it is connected with the ocean, it is connected with the lack of boundaries. So I know that there have already been floods recently in Pakistan. Please forgive me if I don't remember other locations where floods have been at the forefront of people's minds and in the news. There may be, especially at a collective level, an experience of kind of like the floodgates being swung open. There could be actual like floods or storms or flooding in houses, water pipes falling apart, breaking, maybe rivers getting out of their kind of like route or path or designated path. That's the part that I'm not looking forward to. Do remember that astrology is only archetypally predictive, so it does not predict exact material manifestation. We always, as astrologers, give scenarios as to how the energies are likely to play out, but we are not clairvoyants. Saying that Pisces is a water sign, Neptune is associated with waters and the oceans, therefore that's why I think that at a collective level there may be this kind of like tremendous focus on oceans, on floods, and so on. At a collective level, once again, this full moon is likely to bring to our attention themes connected with medicine, connected with drugs, connected with suffering, connected with victims, connected also with the blurring of boundaries and the dissolution of boundaries and of walls. Pisces, in terms of its archetypal energy, is also linked with imagination, fantasy, transcendence, and spirit. It is linked with the mystical. So you could say that on an individual level, maybe less so on a collective level, but on an individual level, we may have some very powerful experiences that are connected with spirit, that are connected with the divine, that are connected with transcending the material, tangible reality of our day-to-day lives. Certainly, Neptune sometimes because it's in close contact with this full moon, Neptune can also bring illusion. So we may become aware of certain aspects of our lives that are not exactly what they appeared to be. I would also be very careful when it comes to this full moon. If something seems too good to be true, it probably is. It probably is, folks. Not everything that glitters is gold. I would keep that in mind. Obviously, it's great to have faith. It's great to kind of like sometimes take the foot off the pedal and say, I leave this, I put this in the hands of infinite intelligence. But I would also be very careful, for instance, when it comes to making payments, when it comes to dealing with more practical matters, I'd say. On this exact day, on the 10th of September, Mercury also stations retrograde. And Mercury is going to be in opposition with Jupiter, which is the traditional dispositor of this full moon. It may feel like agreements that are reached around the time of this full moon might need to be revisited, I want to say. Mercury is going to exactly oppose Jupiter 3 times in September and October. It has opposed Jupiter exactly on the 3rd of September. It will oppose it exactly on the 18th of September, and once again on the 12th of October. There may be this feeling of an agreement that was reached going back and forth pretty much until the middle of October, or having to reevaluate the terms of the contract, having to reevaluate the terms of the agreement until the middle of October, when we've got a lot more clarity. Mercury, by the way, gets out of retrograde, goes out of retrograde on the 2nd of October, but its shadow period ends on the 17th of October. So that's why the middle of October, I feel, is kind of like this sweet spot where we've got clarity, folks. It's a very interesting full moon. I would also recommend looking back at your life, at what was going on around the 2nd of March, give or take 3 days before, 3 days after, because that is when we experienced the new moon in Pisces of this year. So it may feel like events that kicked off, or a certain chapter in your life that kicked off around the 2nd of March is coming to a close, is culminating around the 10th of September. Always remember that full moons are culminations, and full moons also generally tend to bring with them results. It's like, here it is. Face it. That's it. Now, let's dive into the update for each of the 12 zodiac signs. You know me, like a good internet mom, I will always remind you to listen to the update for your rising sign. If you don't know your rising sign, then do find out your time of birth from your parents, from your birth certificate, and go online. I recommend using astro.com to generate your natal chart. In your natal chart, you will see the sign of your ascendant, that's your rising sign. And generally, when it comes to horoscopes such as this is a general horoscope. I recommend listening to the update for the rising sign because it's the closest thing that you can get to a personalized reading. The most granular and accurate types of forecasts are done using the natal chart. Always remember that. So when people sometimes write things like, oh, this doesn't resonate with me, I'm like, yes, of course, because the natal chart is much more complex than just your rising sign or your sun sign. And remember that you're always going to feel the most transits in the sky, celestial events that contact some of your natal planetary placements and angles, especially your personal planets and your angles. So the ascendant-descendant axis and the midheaven IC axis. Also, the way in which we react to transits is very much dependent upon how our natal chart is configured at birth. One person is going to react in one way to a Mars transit, whereas another person is going to react to it differently based on what their natal Mars, for instance, is doing in the natal chart. So do keep that in mind. Okay, enough astrological education. Let's dive into the updates for the 12 zodiac signs. My lovely Aries, Aries suns and Aries risings. On the 10th of September, 3 days before, 3 days after, you have a full moon activating your 12th house, 6th house axis, so the axis of service. And this is forming a harmonious aspect to Uranus and Taurus in your 2nd house of income. What do I like about this full moon, Aries? I like the fact that you are getting the job done. Something is being wrapped up in your life. Work-wise, it may also feel like you're wrapping up a chapter of working on yourself, of working on your mental health, possibly also on your physical health. You might be seeing some good results on both sides. You might also feel like you're finally ready to let go of something that has been eating you up on the inside, that has been causing you to lose sleep, that has been causing you to doubt yourself maybe, that has been causing you to not be in the best of shape, even physically, I'd say. Many times it has actually been proven that blocked emotions or holding on to a negative feeling, a negative emotion can result in physical symptoms. So if you're feeling ready to let go of something in your life, Aries, around this time, which you may very well be feeling, do it, I'd say, because it's probably going to be amazing for your mental health, for your physical health. It probably will lead to you feeling more worthy, so valuing yourself more. You could also be receiving out of nowhere, completely out of the blue, some sort of late payment or a sum of money for a job that you did a while back, and maybe you did not see this coming at all, dear Aries. Also look back at what was going on in your life around the 2nd of March, give or take 3 days before, 3 days after. So this year, 2nd of March, because this full moon is bringing to a close themes that emerged in your life around that time. You could also be hearing good news. So it may feel like someone in your family is getting over a health-related issue. Last but not least, some Aries might hand in their resignation around this time, especially Aries risings. My dear Taurus, Taurus suns and Taurus risings. This full moon on the 10th of September, 3 days before, 3 days after, is activating your 5th house, 11th house axis. And it is forming a harmonious aspect to Uranus in your 1st house of identity. Taurus, you're probably going to be socializing like no one's business around this time. This full moon is probably going to bring about encounters with friends, getting out of the house, connecting with like-minded individuals, connecting with your tribe, so to speak. So feeling welcome within a group of people that are aligned with you in terms of mentality. You could also be receiving some really good news from friends around this time. You might also have an exciting announcement to make to your tribe, to your friends, connected with one of the following. Possibly your love life. If not your love life, then the area of children, the topic of children. You might also have some good news to share with your friends around your living situation or around something that's been happening in your private life. You may also feel like finally an important goal has been crossed off your list. An important goal for you has been ticked, you could say. The one thing that I would recommend maybe watching out for is if you are promising something to a friend around this time, don't go overboard, don't overdo it. There can be a tendency to be a little bit excessive and maybe to promise more than is actually deliverable, I'd say. You could also be wrapping up an important group project in your life. And as this is wrapping up, it is probably something of a creative nature. It is probably something that has involved your imagination. As this is wrapping up, you're feeling free, you're feeling liberated, you're feeling lighthearted. It's exciting. It's almost like, yes, I can look to the future. I would also recommend looking back at your life, Taurus, around the 2nd of March this year, give or take 3 days before, 3 days after, because that's when you had a new moon in Pisces in your 11th house of long-term goals, plans, dreams, groups of people. So you might have started off something around the 2nd of March, which is culminating at this full moon. By the way, I feel the need to say it. I'm gonna say it, especially Taurus risings. There could be some news around pregnancy, if that is something that you are actively trying for. If you are a Gemini sun or a Gemini rising, my dear Geminis, 10th of September, 3 days before, 3 days after, this full moon in Pisces is activating your 10th house of career and your 4th house of home and family, and it is forming a harmonious aspect to Uranus and Taurus in the 12th house. A few things here. First of all, you could be receiving news of an exciting opportunity that awaits you career-wise, but that is also asking you to leave behind your current role, your current position. You might be hearing news connected with a boss. Maybe someone is kind of like stepping down, but for some reason, this seems to be impacting you in a positive way. Maybe it's making room for you to take their place. It may feel like something that was a little bit out of your hands is culminating in a beautiful way, is coming to fruition in a beautiful way in your professional life, Geminis. Also, there could be some unexpectedly good news connected with a parent, especially maybe something linked with, I want to say, their health, or something connected with transportation, short distance travel, and so on. I would also recommend, Geminis, looking back at your life, at what was happening for you career-wise around the 2nd of March. Give or take 3 days before, 3 days after, because that's when you had a new moon in your 10th house of career. The full moon in general brings things to a culminating point. You could also finally receive, maybe you had actually, maybe you'd lost hope. You could receive a bonus or a raise as well around this time, Geminis. One thing to keep in mind is, if you do accept a new role, a new position, remember that Mercury is going retrograde on the same day, on the 10th, and it gets out of its shadow period. So it goes out of retrograde on the 2nd of October, and it gets out of its shadow period on the 17th. So there could be a little bit of vagueness and ambiguity around what exactly it is that you're signing up for. Now, if you are a Cancer sun or a Cancer rising, like yours truly here, on the 10th of September, 3 days before, 3 days after, Cancerians, the full moon in Pisces is activating your 3rd house, 9th house axis, forming a harmonious aspect to Uranus in your 11th house of long-term goals, plans, and dreams. Cancerians, it feels like you're wrapping up maybe a class, a course. If you are taking an exam, if you're handing in your papers, if you're handing in your thesis, if you are taking your driver's license test, the news seems to, the result actually seems to be good. It seems to be positive. It seems to be better than you expected it to be. It almost feels like you're putting it out there and it's out of your hands. There could also be news connected with some sort of impromptu traveling. You could also be surprised by someone who's traveling from afar, from abroad potentially, knocking at your door and saying, "Here I am." There's also a possibility that in-laws have some good news for you, or have something to share with you, because the 9th house is also in general the house of in-laws. I'm liking the harmonious aspect to Uranus. it feels like some Cancerians are having an aha moment when it comes to their belief system, when it comes to their faith, when it comes to their spirituality. It feels like they're no longer fighting and resisting something mentally. So it may feel like you're overcoming a limiting belief around this time. Of course, also look back at what was going on in your life, Cancerians, around the 2nd of March when you had a new moon in the same part of your chart. There could be a feeling of themes being reflected from that new moon to this full moon on the 10th of September. Now, if you are a Leo sun or a Leo rising, 10th of September Leos, 3 days before, 3 days after, this full moon in Pisces is activating your financial axis, and it's forming a harmonious aspect to Uranus and Taurus in your 10th house of career. Leos, you're either getting a bonus around this time or you are welcoming into your professional life maybe an investor, someone who's got the means to make things happen for you professionally and maybe to help your business flourish and move forward. This could also be a time when, if you are receiving a bonus from work or if you are cashing in on an investment of some sort, this could be a time when you're covering some loans or some debts. So you might feel like this is finally out of your life. You're free. You no longer have to think about it. It may no longer have this kind of like hold upon you. If you are in a relationship, then your partner could also have some really good news financially, maybe a windfall, maybe a bonus on their side. You could also be sharing your finances selflessly around this time, my dear Leos. And as you do that, it may feel like the universe is repaying you quite quickly for your generosity, for your kindness, and for your selflessness, because Pisces is about selflessness. I'd recommend also looking back at what was going on in your life around the 2nd of March when you had a new moon in this part of your chart in Pisces. Some Leos might be receiving the green light for a mortgage, a loan, or maybe you're hearing of a bursary or a scholarship if that is something that you've applied for. If you are a Virgo sun or a Virgo rising, my dear Virgos, you and Pisces are obviously in the spotlight the most for this full moon because the full moon is activating the Pisces-Virgo axis. On the 10th of September, 3 days before, 3 days after, you have a full moon in your 7th house of relationships, really nicely aspected to Uranus in your 9th house of long-distance travel. I'm going to say this, if you are in a partnership and you're traveling around this time, Virgos, you're probably going to enjoy it more than you thought you would. There could be a sense of being finally aligned from a mentality perspective with your partner. There could also be some good news making their way to you, connected with a partner's legal situation, something that has to do with their residency, their passport, visas, or maybe something that has to do with their education. You could be signing some papers around this time, my dear Virgos, such as the formal agreement to collaborate with a business partner. I would strongly recommend that you read this 10 times. And that you make sure that both you and the other person is very, very, very clear on the terms, because this full moon is, after all, applying to a conjunction to Neptune, and Mercury is going retrograde on the same day. You may also feel like finally you understand your partner in terms of how they think, and if you're single, then this can be a time when you actually connect with someone that feels right up your street. Also look back at what was going on around the 2nd of March in the area of partnerships and relationships, Virgos, because that's when you had a new moon in this part of your chart. You might also feel around the 10th of September, a few days before, a few days after, Virgos, like you are no longer battling this very powerful opponent in your life. It's like the battle is over. Goodbye. And you're probably going to be pleased to hear that. Now, if you are a Libra sun or a Libra rising, 10th of September, 3 days before, 3 days after. The full moon in Pisces is activating your axis of health and service. It's happening in your 6th house of day-to-day work, and it's forming a nice aspect to Uranus and Taurus in the 8th house. It feels like you're overcoming a work-related crisis or a health-related crisis at this time. Possibly quite unexpectedly, quite out of the blue, just when you thought, you know what, I'm going to give up, it's out of my hands, this is not something that I can fight, this is not something that I control. It may feel like finally things are taking this turn for the better. Some Libras might also receive news of a new job opportunity, or they might actually kick off a new role at work. Some Libras will probably wrap up a very stressful work-related project, maybe something that involved a lot of navigating some murky waters, I'd say. Let's see. Of course, Libras, look back at what was happening in your work life and in the area of health around the 2nd of March. Because whatever kicked off at the time is coming to a close, is culminating, is materializing around the 10th of September. My dear Scorpios, Scorpio suns and Scorpio risings. 10th of September, 3 days before, 3 days after. The full moon in Pisces is activating your 5th house, 11th house axis, and it's forming a harmonious aspect to Uranus and Taurus in the 7th house of relationships. Okay, I gotta say it. Especially for Scorpio risings that are single. This is like a super romantic time. I'm gonna say that again. It is a hyper romantic time. It is an uber romantic time. It is the best time to go out on dates, to connect with people, to say yes. You are likely to fall in love around this time, again, especially if you're single. Even if you're not single, even if you are already with someone, you may feel like you're falling in love again with your partner. There could also be news of pregnancy, so just know that, and maybe quite unexpectedly so. There can also be some really good times to be had together with others, together with friends, together with your partner. You're feeling very loved. You're feeling like life is good. You're feeling like you can really kind of like let your hair down and have fun and attend a party maybe, and just really kind of allow things to take shape however they may. And if you allow a partner to kind of like lead the way around the time of this full moon, you're probably not going to regret it. On the absolute contrary, you might enjoy it a lot, Scorpios. Now, if you are a Sagittarius sun or a Sagittarius rising, 10th of September, 3 days before, 3 days after, there's a full moon activating your 4th house, 10th house axis. Sagittarians, especially Sagittarius risings, are you moving into a new house? Are you buying a house? Are you finally wrapping up the redecoration of the house or the renovation of the house? Yes, maybe, probably. Something is taking shape, something is culminating in your home and family life. It may be something that you need to announce to the outside world. It could be something that you've worked for a long time on, but it also felt a little bit out of your hands. It felt like maybe not everything was something that you could positively influence. You could also wrap up a work-related project from home or something in collaboration with a family member, Sagittarius, quite successfully, I would say. So it feels like a time when you're working together very, very well with family members. I would strongly also recommend looking back at what was going on around the 2nd of March in your life, especially in your home and family life, in your private life, because this full moon might be bringing things to a close. So it's the end of a chapter. Now, if you are a Capricorn sun or a Capricorn rising, my dear Capricorns, 10th of September, 3 days before, 3 days after, the full moon in Pisces is activating your 3rd house, 9th house axis, and it's really nicely aspected to Uranus in your 5th house of enjoyment. Okay, so if you're traveling, Capricorns, around this time, it's probably going to be a very, very fun time, but Mercury is also going retrograde on the same day, so I would be extra careful that you don't misplace your purse, that you don't misplace your, I don't know, your passport, for instance. If you're traveling by car, that you don't park in this place where you're not allowed to park. And even though you've had a great time, you got a parking ticket. I mean, what a buzzkill. Some Capricorns may also be hearing very good news connected with the education of their children, if they have children, or very good news connected with exams, connected with the effort that they've been putting into an educational endeavor. Some Capricorns may also decide to release an old car or an old means of transportation. It's almost like, yes, it's time to be done with this. And it does feel like you're releasing this quite easily. It's like, yes, it's over. I'm excited for the future. If you are an Aquarius sun or an Aquarius rising, 10th of September, 3 days before, 3 days after Aquarians, there's a full moon activating your second 8th house axis, so your financial axis. You're getting paid, Aquarius. The focus is definitely on finances. It's definitely on evaluating or reevaluating your budget so that you can accommodate maybe the needs of your growing family. Or you may be looking at your budget and thinking, you know what, I can afford to move into a better place, into a bigger home. You could also be either buying or selling a property around this time. It does feel like the payday, as I like to call it, is linked with either a family member or with a property. You could also be paying for something quite costly at home, but it's not something that you were forced to pay for. It's not like, oh, something broke and you need to fix it. It's like, no, it was like a very conscious expense that you're looking forward to in a way, because it does mean that you're going to live somehow better. I would be very careful not to pay more than necessary, however. I would check the bank statement, I would check the receipt, I would ask for the receipt, just because this full moon is applying to a conjunction to Neptune, and there could be some misunderstandings, there could be some mistakes, there could be maybe even some scammers lurking, so I would pay attention to that. Also look back at what was going on in your financial life around the 2nd of March, my dear Aquarius. Maybe you're getting a pay rise finally. Whatever kicked off around the 2nd of March is culminating or is materializing, it's taking shape at the time of this full moon. And last but not least, of course, Pisces suns and Pisces risings. You are the number one stars of this full moon because it is happening in your sign. So it may feel like people want to talk to you. It may feel like you are more exposed than you normally are. It may feel like everyone wants a piece of you. Everyone's like, what are they doing? What are they up to? What's happening? So it may feel like you're getting a lot of attention at the time of this full moon. It may also feel like you're wrapping up, because the full moon is happening in your first house. You're wrapping up something very important in your path of self-growth and self-development. Something that also involved working on your relationship sector. You may also feel like you've integrated within yourself a new side, a new dimension, or you've accessed a different part of your potential by being in a specific relationship, by being in a specific partnership. Some relationships may need to be released at this time if this full moon calls for it, if you feel inspired to do so. I would ask myself, is this going to contribute to my growth moving forward? And if the answer is yes, then of course my recommendation would be to do this gladly and willingly. You might also announce to the outside world, make this sort of like big announcement about your relationship sector. It doesn't necessarily have to be the end of a relationship. It could be you kind of like deciding to propose to a partner, or you deciding to give someone an actual shot, an actual chance. You may be having some really exciting and thrilling conversations with a partner around this time, and all of a sudden it's like, yes, they get me and I get them. There could also be a sense of you forgiving yourself around this time, maybe for something that you felt felt like you made a mistake on a while back, especially in the area of relationships. You could be asking for forgiveness from a partner. And if you're doing that, then you may be very pleasantly surprised to see that they are like, yes, come here. I want to give you a big hug. The focus might also be on your physical body around this time. You may feel, Pisces, like you need to give your body a little bit of rest. So you might decide together with a partner or together with a good friend or a colleague, you might decide to take a short road trip maybe and spend some time in nature, somewhere on a hill overlooking the sea. Remember, however, that Mercury goes retrograde on this day. So if you are traveling in any shape or form, I would not expect it to go like, you know, super smooth. I would factor in potential delays or just kind of like minor incidents along the way that can happen. It doesn't mean that they have to happen, but they can happen, certainly. Thank you once again for tuning in for your full moon update. If you have Instagram, and you want to follow me on Instagram for more regular updates, not daily, but every other day, my Instagram handle is @ruxunbelievable in one word. And if you want to work with me, if you want to get a personal consultation based on your natal chart, then you can find me on my website, which is writteninthestars-astrology.com. That is writteninthestars-astrology.com. Enjoy this full moon and let us know in the comments how it's playing out for you. Thank you. Bye.